My name is Ilva Tare. I'm a senior non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Councils in Washington, D.C. Welcome to Balkans Debrief. Albania and North Macedonia started membership talks with the European Union last week, making a milestone for the enlargement process in the Western Balkans after years of disappointments. In the light of the setbacks, however, many in the region wonder how significant this event really is. Has the EU really turned a new leaf? Has its credibility been restored? And what are the challenges ahead? My guest today is Pierre Mirel, Honorary Director General at the European Commission and lecturer at Sciences Po Paris. Thank you for joining us in Balkans Debrief, Pierre.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
In the last decade, the EU enlargement process has believed to be dead, and even though two Balkan countries, Montenegro and Serbia, have been negotiating with the European Union, the pace has been glacial. In 10 years, Montenegro has opened 33 chapters and only been able to close 3, and in 8 years, Serbia has opened 18 chapters and closed only 2. For Albania and North Macedonia, a new methodology requested by French President Emmanuel Macron will be adopted. What does this mean in practice, Pierre?
Well, the idea with the new methodology was, in the first place, to have a more political process. Not just opening, closing chapters, looking at whether this or that regulation have been adopted or not, but, political steering from the member states. So that's an important element. The second one was, the idea was to put together a certain number of chapters in what is called clusters, environment, energy, different chapters grouped into a cluster, so that the relationship between different chapters would be easier to understand and maybe easier for the legislators to adopt the required legislation. So that was, the two main reasons for the new methodology.
The new methodology kept the unanimity vote for the EU members in deciding when to open and close chapters, gave member states more political leadership, introduced the concept of sanctions through reversibility in case of backsliding in the candidate countries' democracies. Member states have been able to stall and, in fact, kill Turkey's accession membership completely. Does reversibility matter? What do you think?
Well, I do not agree that member states have killed candidacy of Turkey. It's Turkey that has killed itself in the accession negotiation process, with a major backsliding of democracy, human rights, democracy, rights of the Kurds, and etc. But that's a separate issue.
But the process is dead. The accession process is dead, as we speak with Turkey.
For the time being, I think it's dead. You're right. It's de facto frozen. It should have been de facto, de jure frozen, and the Commission and the EU member states had the possibility to do so, but have not, dared to do it because they're afraid that Turkey might, turn off the tap for more migrants to come in. So that's a separate issue.
So in this regard, does the concept of reversibility matter for the new candidate countries?
It should, but until now, even before before the new methodology was adopted, there was even from time to time the discourse of saying, if you don't do this, if you don't progress, you will have less financial support, pre-accession support. I have never seen that put into place. So I have some doubts on the reversibility. And for another reason, which is that the amounts which are allocated to the countries before accession, during the accession period, are not very large, not very important. So I guess for a country, any of the candidate country, would it really matter if it would not move forward, or even, would have some backsliding on the process? I'm not sure, because the financial support is not enough to really present a leverage in the process.
And how about unanimity? Should have been kept in this new methodology, or maybe a qualified majority could have been better?
It has never been discussed during the discussions on new methodology. No one has reopened that question. I think it has to be maintained because joining the EU is not, joining merely a free trade zone. It goes far beyond that. And you need really to embark all the member states to welcome a new member so that you would not have one or two opposing that because it's a major step forward. It's not just having one, plus one or two in the family. It really concerns the whole group and the future of its policies.
But then bilateral issues bring up the veto, and that's what happened with North Macedonia as well. Can that be avoided in the future, or you see no other way but convincing the countries to work together?
No, I don't see how it could be avoided. I don't see what could have been done. Maybe putting more pressure on Bulgaria, but yet when it was Greece vetoing North Macedonia, that was during the financial crisis, and so many people thought that was the right time for the EU to put pressure on Greece for lifting its veto on North Macedonia. It did not happen. So why would it now with Bulgaria or any other country in the future? I'm not sure. There's kind of solidarity between member states, whether we like it or not, and I don't like it when it comes to vetoing. But anyway.
Pierre, perhaps the last question regarding the new methodology. Has it made the process easier for the new candidates, faster maybe, or there are changes that will not impact the process, the negotiations?
Difficult to say until now, because there's only one example so far, the opening of an additional cluster with Bulgaria last December. That's all. So, in terms of political steering, we've not seen more than before. Reversibility, we've not seen anything yet. And even paradoxically, cluster has been opened with Serbia, although there's a backsliding in Serbia. So you could even, put a question mark whether reversibility would mean something or not.
And in the light of Ukraine war, do you think there is political will among both the EU members and candidate countries for accession, and how long do you think the accession will take?
Oh, that's €100,000 question, right? I don't think a date can be given. I think you're right to say that this kind of probably new political will, both on the EU side and the Western Balkan countries side.
Political insecurity, maybe.
Yes, but the implementation of reforms may take some time, and also there are obstacles that we can't foresee. I mean, there's some that we do know. For instance, how long would it take for Serbia to overcome the bilateral issue with Kosovo? We don't know. No one would have expected Bulgaria to veto North Macedonia. And this maybe is not the end. How will Bulgaria behave during the accession process? Nobody knows. Montenegro, Prime Minister Bazovic is willing to, fight high-level corruption. Wow. But when he will really start doing that, his government may collapse because he may not enjoy anymore the support of DPS. So, there are so many unknowns, so many different potential obstacles that I would not dare to venture in, giving a date for any of the countries concerned.
Even for Montenegro or even Serbia?
No.
And Albania and North Macedonia, it's too early to talk about that.
No, because it's, again, I mean, what would happen? What would happen after the judiciary reform in Albania? Will the effort stop? Will it continue? What will happen to this highly polarized political situation in Albania? With the split of DP, the opposition party, into two. I mean, there are too many unknowns for being able to say, I believe this will be the date. It's impossible.
In your view, is there a new political will in Europe?
I'm not sure there is. I'm not sure. I would wish to say, yes, definitely it has changed. I'm not sure. I'm saying that because several reasons. Well, first of all, the economic situation in the EU is not very good, mainly because of the war in Ukraine, of course. The energy question, the fragility of the eurozone, in particular following what happened, the political crisis in Italy, the inflation. So this is not a good situation, and it's not going it's going to last for quite some time, unfortunately. Second, the migration issue is not completely settled in the EU, and unfortunately, I think we may see differences and even gap between East and West within the EU in the coming months, because migration will continue. And another important reason is the governance problem within the EU, because of Poland, Hungary's policies, the abuse of veto power by Prime Minister Orban over the past months on several occasions. So, there are a number of member states who are not really thrilled at welcoming new members because they might be worried that the new members may, within a few years, become close allies to Orban, a liberal, becoming, a liberal. So I'm not sure.
And is there sufficient political will in the Western Balkans, in your opinion?
Well, I would make a difference between the countries. I think there is certainly a strong will in the new negotiating countries, Albania, North Macedonia. They have proved, they have demonstrated over the past couple of years their willingness, their readiness, not just willingness, readiness, but the efforts that they have made. Albania is astonishing example with the vetting process, going through the curricula of all the magistrates to see whether they had acquired assets in a very old manner or not, whether their CV was up to the job, etc. I mean, this is an unprecedented reform. It has shaken the system, certainly, for a couple of years, but that's a very good reform. So they have, both countries, demonstrated their capability of undertaking major reforms. That's true. In Montenegro, there is certainly a strong political will in the government of Prime Minister Bozovic. But again, following what I said just before, his aim is clearly to move towards the EU. And he said, for one of the first priorities, is to fight corruption. But fighting corruption means, in Montenegro, fighting largely circles which have been with or following or close to DPS, President Đukanović, for almost 30 years. What will happen when he will start really pushing along these ideas of fighting corruption? His government may collapse. So yes, strong political will, but not shared largely in the country. Now, moving to Serbia, much less political will, obviously, much less. It seems to me, but that's my personal opinion, that President Vučić is now convinced that the short-term, medium-term political gains of having a kind of status quo for Serbia on its EU path are much higher than the potential long-term benefits of EU accession. And therefore, why would he change?
And what should the EU response be to that ambiguity?
But then comes another issue, which is, what a number of think tanks and NGO would call stabilitocracy, right? Serbia is an important country in the region, just like Croatia and Albania, the three main partners actually, and important for stability. So what can the EU do? The EU is trying to find a fine balance between pushing Serbia, but not too much, because Serbia is so close to another camp, or two other camps rather, Serbia, Russia, and China actually, that it's not easy to navigate, and the support that Vucic has received in the recent the presidential elections is quite strong. So it's not easy to move. So I would say the willingness on Serbia's side is certainly limited, even more limited in Bosnia and Herzegovina. But for other reasons, I think the three constituent people do not want to overcome legacy of the war and continue to disagree on how the state and the entities should become functional. So, yeah.
And North Macedonia? How do you see the will?
Well, no, I said North Macedonia and Albania, as I said, in my view, in both countries, there is a very strong will, and both have demonstrated, Albania and Macedonia, that they're capable of conducting reforms. Although it remains to be seen what's going to happen in North Macedonia as well.
Due to the constitutional changes, yeah.
Constitutional changes. So, question mark.
Your policy paper for Robert Schuman Foundation in May was in support of a new approach for the Western Balkans, staged accession with a consolidation phase. Can you walk us through your thinking?
Always great pleasure. This idea of a staged approach is based on, on three main principles. One principle is bringing some logic in the accession process. What does that mean? Until now, a country negotiating its accession to the EU receives small amounts of financial assistance to get prepared for accession. But as soon as that country becomes a member, it's a cash machine. Billions of EU fall into its budget. This is completely illogical. So the first principle of this approach is to end this binary approach, whereby you receive little during the accession negotiation, which you don't know how long it will take, and then a massive support once you become a member, which actually is even more logical in the sense that it increases the gap, the economic gap between the current member states and the future member states. So that's the first principal reason. The second one, and that's the core of the proposal, is for the countries to progress in the accession process, progress on reform stage by stage, and when moving from a stage to another one, you are somehow rewarded by increasing funds for assistance.
Based in performance for each candidate country.
Based in performance. And here comes the question of reversibility. Because if you provide much more funding, more than what is provided these days with the IPA program, 3-4 times more, then you have a strong leverage, including if there's backsliding for reversibility. But if you, so that's an important principle. And the third one, some people are surprised when I wrote about it. Sort of consolidation period, which means, in my view, the country, the negotiating country, has completed all the negotiations, fulfilling the criteria, good report from the Commission. However, it does not join the EU immediately. Why not? Well, I think there should be a period of time 2, 3, 4 years, depending, which would allow to, although there's no guarantee, absolute guarantee, but at least sort of a last safeguard for ensuring that the country would not, soon after completing negotiations, become illiberal again or turn out to be completely off the criteria and values of the EU. During that phase, the country would enjoy all the rights of member states except two. It would have no commissioner and no veto right.
And how long can this consolidation phase be? What's your idea?
My idea is that it would take 3 to 4 years. But there is another advantage. If we use the example of Kosovo, Serbia, let's assume Serbia has completed all the negotiations, but it has not recognized Kosovo. It has negotiated a legally binding agreement with Kosovo, which is actually what the EU has officially asked until now. But there may be in the future some members who would say, no, you will not become member until you fully recognize Kosovo, then Kosovo can join the UN. That period of time would allow Kosovo to move from a legally binding agreement, say normalization, to full recognition. That would be an interesting, intermediary period. That's the advantage, I see.
And what's the reaction from the European Union leaders on your proposal, on your approach regarding the staged accession?
Well, the president of the European Council, Charles Michel, he's convinced. He has pleaded for that stage approach in stage accession in Belgrade and in Pristina, in Tirana, when he was there a couple of weeks ago. The conclusions of the June European Council refer to gradual accession, whatever that means. It's not explicit. So, we shall see in the second part of this year whether this gradual accession will translate into this new approach.
So is this staged accession similar to the European political community that Macron and Michel also have mentioned?
No, not at all. Not at all. No, it's only, for me, the stage approach is taken the new methodology, moving it a bit further by providing more funding. And when the French proposed to the Commission new methodology, they had included in their paper, or rather non-paper, they had included the idea of massive support, financial support during accession. That was not retained by the Commission, unfortunately. So it has nothing to do with the idea of Macron.
Thank you, Pierre Mirel, for sharing your ideas with us.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching us. And you can follow on Twitter at AC Europe and join our conversation by using hashtag Balkans Debrief.